Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So guys, I hope everyone is doing okay. Gotta be honest, I don't like the slate of shows I've had today. But nevertheless, that one with Ed was okay. The one with Ed was good. This one is interesting. I don't know if I can show this video because it's an MSNBC video, and so they may give me a copyright thing, but I will play the audio so you can hear it. In the video, what you will hear is Chris Hayes talking to one Jonathan Chait. Jonathan Chait puts forth a conspiracy theory where Rachel Maddow would bow, lift her hand and say, "You, sir, are the master." A person wearing a tin hat will look at him and say, "Oh my God, that's fucking insane." And yet he puts it forth. He does so knowing how crazy it sounds, because continuously, as he puts it forward, he says, "I'm not saying this is true. This is probably not the case, but here it is anyway." I wonder if Jonathan Chait beats his wife. Hey, maybe he beats his boyfriend. I'm not saying it's true, but I'm saying it's possible that that's the case. I'm saying that's the case. Maybe Jonathan Chait has hit a hooker on his way to one of the studios in order to give some conspiracy theory to Chris Hayes. I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying it could potentially be the case. There's an outlying chance that such could have happened. I mean, he might have been late that day. He looked a little disheveled that day. Anything could have happened. Anything could have happened. Their argument is that Donald Trump, baby Donald Trump, was groomed by the Soviet Union as an infant to grow up to be an asset. And I'm being hyperbolic when I say an infant, but they're trying to say a young Donald Trump was groomed by the Soviet Union while they were in Afghanistan to be an asset. Shame on you, Chris Hayes. Shame on you, Chris Hayes. This is embarrassing. I understand you're on MSNBC. I understand that you sleep on a bed of money while being on MSNBC. I understand that MSNBC has a certain political disposition to which they would assiduously attend to the affairs of the Democratic Party. Thick and thin, they would assiduously attend to the affairs of the Democratic Party. If those affairs meant not covering one Mr. Bernie Sanders, then they weren't going to cover one Mr. Bernie Sanders, and they were going to fire Ed Schultz. But you're there, Chris. And they are pushing this Russia narrative despite not having any smoking gun, despite moving the ball from this idea of collusion and all this other stuff, despite having squat to pay for it, to put up for it. You move the ball forward. And in moving the ball forward, you've even gone to the point of, it wasn't just collusion. Infant baby Donald Trump, as he suckled on the tit of his mother, was given Soviet literature to be an asset of the Russian government. This is nonsense. This is utter nonsense. Are you serious? Did you really put this on your air? Did you really have somebody get on television and say the President of the United States was groomed to be an asset when he was younger, dealing with business in the Soviet Union? 20, 30 years ago. Groomed. Molded. Sculpted by the Soviet Union to be this asset. Forget the fact that he's arming neo-Nazis in the Ukraine that is absolutely against the benefit of the Russian government. Forget the fact that he's over there now in NATO spitting in the eye of Germany and Russia. Because whatever you want to say about this, whether you realize it or not, there's a pipeline that Germany and Russia is going to get involved in that Donald Trump wants for American companies. These things break your model of the world. If he's a Russian asset, he's the worst Russian asset that you could possibly find. Let's take a look at this, or at the very least take a listen to this. This is so... Shame on you, Chris Hayes. Shame on you, Chris Hayes. Can't believe you had this guy on here putting this conspiracy theory out. Rachel Maddow wouldn't put out something this absurd. You're literally saying a young Donald Trump was somehow as if they thought this billionaire the self-interesting failure of a billionaire. They couldn't get money from anywhere else. This guy is one day going to be president of the United States. And we're going to groom him to be president. This is nonsense. This is nonsense. And this is the shit that they're putting on television and piping to the public. And they eat it up. They look for things. Oh, here's another thing, a tidbit about Russia. Oh, here's another tidbit about Trump. None of it is evidence of anything. And yet, each and every tidbit gets assigned and stuck to Trump because they dislike and hate Donald Trump. Play into your audience. The guy couldn't even come out with a straight face and own it and say, I believe it. He had to continuously say, I'm not saying this is true. This is probably not true. But here's a conspiracy theory that I'm just going to pull out of my ass and I'm just going to put on national television. That's what I'm going to do. Smell that aroma. Fresh ass. Here's an FMA from Chris Hayes.
It's not us, Putin has told Trump. It's the subordinates fighting against our friendship. That's beautiful. The precise relationship between the two leaders is at the heart of the mystery still surrounding the 2016 election. Did the Trump campaign, did the candidate at the heart of it conspire with Russia to subvert American democracy? And does Russia have some kind of leverage over Donald Trump? In a new cover story from New York Magazine, writer Jonathan Chait argues, we have not allowed ourselves to consider the full range of possibilities. Chait lays out what could be considered the worst-case scenario for Trump-Russia collusion, that Donald Trump has been a Russian intelligence asset since 1987. New York Magazine's Jonathan Chait joins me now. So, okay, it sounds insane. I just want to say, it really does.
Why is that the worst-case scenario? Why not an infant? Why not? He was a Manchurian candidate as an infant. Let's say that the Soviet Union got one of their agents to deal with his mother. And during the time that Trump was wherever he was, they were feeding him literature, praising Russia, hailing the Soviet system, hailing the Soviet Union, feeding it to him, feeding it to him. What if they put something in his baby milk? So as he suckled on the breasts of Mama Trump, he's inhaling Russian propaganda. I'm making the point that what you're saying is insane. You're saying that this is the worst case scenario and people haven't allowed themselves to think of the worst case scenario. Hey, like I said, fuck it. Let's say he was an infant. Let's say he was an infant. I said before he was born. Let's say he's Lenin incarnate. Let's go there.
It's like the idea that he goes to Moscow in 87, is cultivated as a Russian intelligence asset and is this sort of like sleeper cell for decades sounds nuts. It sounds like the stuff of conspiracy theories. Why are you not insane?
So that's a great question, Chris. I get that all the time. So first of all, the piece acknowledges that that is probably not true, but it might be. And one of the reasons I wrote this is you need to take seriously some of these low probability, high impact scenarios. You know, before the election, sort of everyone heard that Hillary Clinton had about an 80% chance of winning, and we all just treated it like that meant 100% and didn't think about what would that 20% alternative really mean.
No, that's not right at all. No, Huffington Post said she had a 90% chance of winning. And in the same way that Republicans were smelling their own farts, meaning inhaling their own media, telling themselves things, you did the same thing. You went with this idea that if you can convince the public that Hillary had a 100% chance of winning, that the public would just fall in line and just vote for her in this kind of weird way. You did the same thing with the superdelegates, making it look like if her chance was unassailable, then people would not necessarily vote Sanders, or you can drain votes from Sanders. People would essentially fall in line and just vote for the person who they believe was going to win. You told yourselves things that just wasn't true. Your media told yourselves things. If you looked at the polling, she could never pull away. The grab him by the pussy video would come out, and Trump would still be right there in spitting distance, pawing at her, those orange hands, tiny fingers. You're trying to make the argument that because you guys were so magnificently over the top, height of your lungs wrong about the chances of Hillary Clinton winning, that you should somehow take the small, tiny, nearly imperceptible chance that Donald Trump was a sleeper agent going back to the time he was a kid. Or, I'll be fair to you, to the time he was a young adult. Or younger. I'm saying the two things don't correlate with one another. You are inhaling your own propaganda. And what you're saying right now, at this very moment, the justification that you're using to try to come up with this conspiracy theory is literally the same thing of you inhaling your own propaganda, while ironically trying to use the converse argument to justify it. I hope I'm making that clear. Let me try that one more time, because I want to make that clear. This argument of, we told ourselves that Hillary Clinton had an unassailable chance in the process. Nobody in their right mind will put it in the reality shows over Hillary Clinton. Oh my God, she lost. What happened? What happened? She lost. Huffington Post, 98% chance of winning the day she lost. Now, the problem with that is Huffington Post and lefties were inhaling their own media in the same way that Mitt Romney and Republicans were inhaling their own media when they thought Mitt Romney was going to win, and Romney didn't even write an acceptance speech or consolation speech. You're making the argument, however, that because there was a small percent chance that Donald Trump was going to win, and that you didn't give that chance any credibility, that you should now give credibility the small, tiny, minute, imperceivable chance that Donald Trump was a sleeper agent for the Soviet government. I'm saying that in the same way, it is the opposite. In the same way you were inhaling your own propaganda, raising Hillary Clinton's chances up to winning and lowering Donald Trump's chances to winning, you are inhaling your own propaganda now as for reasons and justifications to raise this conspiracy theory. Your logic is flawed, sir. It's backwards. It's relatively ironic. Let him keep going. This is a weird argument. And by the way, if you have to continuously say this is probably not true, but this is probably not true, but then maybe it's just not true. And maybe you're doing this for reasons other than reality.
So that's part of what I'm doing with this, with aspects of this piece, like this trip to Moscow. You know, what would it mean if it really went that deep? Now, there's a lot of ways in which this scandal could be really bad and not go that deep. But I think you need to consider that for another reason, which is that everyone always says, well, this has been Trump's view forever. All this stuff he's saying about the Western allies splitting us apart from the West, and how he's sort of pissing on them all the time and saying, you know, we should let them go their own way. That's just what he's always thought. It's not really what he's always thought. It's what he's thought since 1987. He never thought that before then, or at least he never said it before then. And in 1987 is when he went to Moscow, and he's feted by the Russians and tours Moscow. And then he comes back. Then he starts talking about running for president for the first time. And then he starts talking for the first time about how our allies are a bunch of freeloaders and we should kick them to the curb.
Yeah, and we should say that he is, I mean, I just want to be clear here. He is really consistent on that point, right? The idea that this sort of zero-sum view that our allies are free riding and we're paying for it. He takes out full-page ads at $100,000. He sounds identical to how he does now, right? The idea that, like, we're getting abused, we're getting taken for granted, and we're paying for other people's defense.
We're paying for other people's defense who were defending against the Russians.
Right, at that point particularly, yes.
So it really dovetails with Russian foreign policy interests then and now. Now, again, that's probably a coincidence, but it might not be. I mean, I think...
My problem with this story is that the entirety of the story, there's no story. Hey, I have a theory. I pulled this out of my ass, and now Chris Hayes is going to give me his airtime so I can tell it to a public that is perfectly open to hearing the new conspiracy theory about Donald Trump. And for all of my protestations that this is probably not true, this is probably just complete BS, they're never going to hear that part that this is probably just BS and this is probably not true. I don't know what Donald Trump's views were before he went to Russia, but you're telling me 30, 40 years ago that the Soviet Union was grooming Donald Trump. You even used the term vetted. Vetted for what? He wasn't running for office. He wasn't running for anything. He was a business guy trying to get a loan because nobody else would give him money. Now, if you want to say that that gave him some, you know, to be a little bit more amenable to Russia or Soviet Union, fair enough. Fair enough. But that is a far cry for him being a Soviet asset or Soviet agent or sleeper agent or somebody who's working at the behest of Moscow or working at the behest of the Soviet Union or working at the behest of Russia. This stuff is nonsense. I can't believe Chris Hayes. How pathetic. How utterly pathetic. And you allowed him to spew this on your airwaves, even if you dislike Trump. This guy's just got on here and made a conspiracy theory. You even said, why aren't you insane? And he hasn't answered that question of why he wasn't insane. This just sounds like political hacks putting out a knife in Donald Trump. The knife is somewhat risky, though, and somewhat blunted, because even he himself has to admit that this is probably nonsense. Doesn't stop him from saying it, though. Nor does it stop Chris Hayes from airing it. Nor does it stop Democrats who's looking for a way to assuage their understanding and paradigm of the world from hearing it. How utterly pathetic Chris Hayes.
You know, you have to take seriously the possibility that it's not a coincidence.
No, you don't.
And, you know, I try to assemble all the information that I think can be brought to bear on this question. Like I quote John Brennan, who was the CIA director as recently as 2016, who said that he thinks the Russians have something over on Donald Trump. And the weird thing is that thinking like the CIA director, hey, maybe he knows what he's talking about, that's the kook theory as we understand it. Like the kooks are the ones who are saying we should listen to the guy who's running the CIA. Usually the kooks are saying the CIA is part of the conspiracy. Right. And now it's we kooks who say, let's listen.
Well, I want to follow up on that, but first, there's one piece in here that I completely forgotten about. So I want to play Brennan's testimony in May 2017 that you cite in the piece just to give people a flavor of how he talks about it. Take a listen.
I've studied Russian intelligence activities over the years and have seen it, again, manifest in many different of our counterintelligence cases and how they have been able to get people, including inside of CIA, to become treasonous. And frequently individuals who go along that treasonous path do not even realize they're along that path until it gets to be a bit too late.
And you also have a reminder in the piece of that fact that he got briefed in, what was it, August? In August 2016, the head of British intelligence flies to the U.S., this was reported by Jane Mayer, to brief him personally on what was going on between the Trump campaign and Russia.
Yeah, and The Guardian had another report about another Western European, or I think maybe Eastern European intelligence agency briefing him about the same thing. They were listening to intercepts of Russian officials talking about the Trump campaign and the connections they had between them. So we don't know what those intercepts said, but clearly something, you know, alarmed him, set him off, and made him reach these dire conclusions.
Here, you know, you have this metaphor of the cave, right? That we keep thinking that the bottom is just right around.
If they had something, they'd release it. Let's be honest. These guys leak like a sieve. It's been 2 years. Honestly, it's been 2 fucking years. And they have screamed about it. They have talked about it. They have gotten stories wrong over and over again. You have a bunch of spooks who are coming out against Trump. Okay. Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? I understand what you're saying, man. That's your opinion per se, but where's the evidence? Why on earth should you just accept this? And Chris Hayes putting this out as if this is some kind of story. This is a non-story. Now, I understand there are people who are looking for something to assuage their paradigm of the world of why Hillary Clinton lost, who hate Donald Trump, who look for each and every story something bad about Trump and want to tack something onto Trump. Fair enough. And they found Russia as a scapegoat for this. All of their sins, all of their failures. Hillary Clinton didn't lose on her own merits. Hillary Clinton lost because of some kind of nefarious Russia stuff. That's nonsense, but that's what they're trying to convince themselves of. I'm trying to nail this down, that evidence. This story has nothing here. There's nothing here. This spook said this. Hasn't shown us anything. The spook said this. And Donald Trump went here and he came back and wrote this. And I'm not saying this is true, but That's what the story is. I'm not saying this is true, but I'm going to put this at the bottom so you can read it for yourself. Or you can hear it for yourself and you can see Chris Hayes without my interruptions and everything else. But this is nonsense. This is nonsense. This is utter nonsense. So I'm going to leave this here. Chris Hayes, I thought you were better than this man. Honestly, I don't watch Chris Hayes. Every so often I will see some of the clips that comes up. Sometimes Chris Hayes does bang up interviews. But this interview, for all intents and purposes, is nonsense. I have a new conspiracy theory about Trump. Great, let's hear it. Off to the races. Off to the races. All right. I'm going to end this. Jamal knows Sterner. I think you're trying to say Steiner. Yeah, Steiner is awesome. Steiner is awesome. All right. I'm going to end this. But this is just conspiracy theories. That's all this is. This is a conspiracy theory. Tinfoil hat Chris Hayes. Tinfoil hat Chris Hayes. In fact, I'm probably going to name the video that. All right, guys. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, there's always Patreon. Thanks, guys.